This is me, Craig Ferguson. I'm inviting you to come and see my brand new comedy hour. Well, it's about an hour and a half, and I don't have an opener because these guys cost money. But what I'm saying is I'll be on stage for a while. Anyway, come and see me live on the Pants on Fire tour in your region. Tickets are on sale now, and we'll be adding more as the tour continues throughout 2025 and beyond. For a full list of dates, go to thecraigfergusonshow.com. See you on the road, my dears. My name is Craig Ferguson. The name of this podcast is Joy. I talk to interesting people about what brings them happiness. One of the rules I set for myself when I started this podcast is that I was only going to talk to people that I wanted to talk to. And for the most part, I'd stuck to that, except for the episodes when it was just me talking to myself. But I will say this. My guest today is someone who I've known tangentially and I'm a fan of, and I've watched him work over the last maybe almost 20 years since I started in late night, 15 years, something like that. He is a very unusual mind, a stand-up comedian, but much more than a stand-up comedian, as I think you're about to find out. Moshe Kasher, everybody. What I have to say to you, Moshe, is this. I haven't seen you for a while, and you've got new glasses.
I'm glad you noticed. I did get new glasses, and they're about to be old glasses.
Are they glasses that you can see people behind you? They look like they might be glasses where they've got the little mirrors, and you can see people behind you. You know what ones I'm talking about?
What I can say about that is this. They were made in Germany, so the possibility that they're doing surveillance is higher than if they were American glasses.
Well, I think nowadays, we're all under a little bit of surveillance. We signed up for it, man. We signed up for it with these things. They're phones, man, bro.
I thought you were talking about Kash Patel and the new surveillance apparatus of the United States government, which has never been more sophisticated and impressive.
Tell me about this. I don't know anything about it.
About me and Kash Patel? Well, Kash is an old college buddy. He's running the FBI now, and I'm on his email list, and I'm getting a lot of the intel, and he's up to some really interesting stuff. And I'm really glad you had me on your podcast, because that's all I want to talk about today.
Do you really know Kash Patel?
No, I don't wish I did. I hope he doesn't know who I am. I never want him to know my name.
He knows who you are. He knows when we are sleeping, and he knows when we are awake.
Wait, Kash Patel is Santa Claus?
Wow, yes,
I didn't see that.
That's kind of what I'm saying to you. That's what I'm saying, that he's Santa. He knows some are on the naughty list, some are on the nice.
You're so right. He 100% has a naughty and nice list, and it's actually just it's an Elon Musk X feed, and he just looks at it, and the coal is back too. They're digging for coal.
I heard about that. What do you use coal for now? See, I grew up in Scotland where coal was very popular. We used it for all sorts of things. We made houses out of it and toys. I think my first Christmas present was coal. But it's coals for power stations, I guess. That's it, isn't it?
I'm glad that you're coming to me for questions about the power infrastructure in the United States, because I'm the right guy. Listen, I grew up Jewish, so our Christmas presents were made of gold, and they were just telescopes where we could see into the houses of the Gentile families.
Oh, nice. Tiny little telescopes as well.
Teeny little telescope made of
little telescope.
Golden foreskins.
But you had quite, I'm glad you mentioned growing up, because I'm always fascinated to talk to you, because you got clean and sober, like, before most people get started on their journey of excess, if they're going to have one. What was the name of your book again? I read it ages ago, but it was about somebody who got clean and sober by the age of 16 or something.
Oh, that's my first book, Kasher in the Rye, the true tale of a white boy from Oakland who became a drug addict, criminal, mental patient, and then turned 16.
Turned 16. There you go. Yeah, I remember it. I'm glad you remember it too. It's a fascinating kind of thing, because I feel like you should be able to sue someone, I think, if you've gone through all that by the time you're 60.
Well, who would it be? My mother?
Probably, yeah. I think probably you should sue your mother.
I've officially been sober such a long time from such a young age that I don't even find it impressive anymore. From about age 20 to about age 35, I was like very proud of it. Like it's been 15 years and I'm only 30 years old. Now I'm 45 and it's been 30 years and I get embarrassed trying to talk about it at like dinner parties because it begs so many questions that I don't have good answers to.
Well, it's interesting thing. You bring up an interesting point because I've been sober for over 30 years as well. And it is an interesting thing because people say, will say things to me like, do you miss it? And I'm like, miss what? I don't even know what you're talking about.
I can't remember it.
It's such a fucking long time ago. What happens is though, I describe myself as an alcoholic. I don't know how you identify, but that's kind of, and I feel like that's still what I am. It's just, it's not connected to, it's more a description of the type of person that I am, the type of, mental aberrations that I have are connected with being an alcoholic. I mean, look, I can get back to drinking pretty fast if I made a terrible error of judgment, but it doesn't come up in my daily life at all. Do you think about it at all?
About drinking again?
Yeah, drinking or using or anything like that.
Well, I'll answer your first question by saying during those glory years when I would brag at parties about how long I had been sober, because it really was something I thought was so cool and unique and different about me because I was so young and I really was proud of it. And I was proud of the muck that I'd pulled myself out of. But as I have gotten older, and I'm sure it's not a coincidence, it's coincided with me feeling less sort of confident about declaring how long it's been, is this idea of I no longer understand the word alcoholic. Like I understand the framing that you're giving over. And I think in the program, it becomes a sort of spiritual state of being. It's my orientation in the world. It's the way that I interact with the universe. It's the agita I feel if I'm not caring for myself. It's, scrambling thoughts, blah, 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 which I have all of those characteristics, but so do a lot of people. Right. But I got sober so young. I was 15 years old when I got out of rehab for the last time, almost 16.
Wow.
And for, I would say, probably 20 years, I knew in my bones that I was an alcoholic. But now I don't know if I know what an alcoholic is. And I mean, obviously I know that there are alcoholic behaviors, drinking too much, compulsive drinking, being unable to stop drinking once you start. But nothing about me is the same from when I was 15. So the idea that there's one spiritual state of being that still is totally true and definitive for me is harder with each passing year for me to wrap my brain around.
Yeah, I can identify very strongly with that. I think the thing that I pivot around, which is maybe slightly different or a slightly different way of approaching it to you, is that I like take the allergy kind of things. Like if I was allergic to peanuts when I was 5 years old, I'm allergic to peanuts. I'm 62 years old. The allergy, I've changed a great deal in that time, but the essential allergy to peanuts remains fundamentally true and unchanged. And I feel like that with me, alcohol is kind of like that. It's still the basic. The first drink is the one that gets you drunk, not the third one, not the 10th one. And if I get to the point where I introduce the allergen into my system, then I'm no longer holding the wheel. That's kind of how I feel about it.
And that makes total sense, and I don't refute it. Actually, I have a new book out that came out last year. I think you'd actually really like it. It's called Subculture Vulture, a memoir in 6 scenes. And in each subculture that I examine, these are like the kind of 6 worlds that I've spent my life in. I do a history of that world, and then I enter the history at a certain point. It becomes about my time in that world. And the first chapter, it's actually more, I don't know, they're actually longer than chapters. It's like the first novella is about my time in AA. And I talk about this whole process where I went through this brain melt at about, I don't know, about 20 years sober, where it just became harder and harder for me to understand what I meant when I declared myself alcoholic. But I understand what you're saying too, that idea, like once you have crossed a threshold into alcoholism, you become allergic in a way that is permanent. And not to say I think anyone should drink again. I certainly don't. And I'm still sober. But allergies even change from 15 to 45. I mean, even within the framework of the analogy, you could say, well, I was allergic to the peanut when I was 15, but now I'm 45 and my chemistry has changed. But I use an analogy in the book I think you'd like to describe what alcoholism is I have two problems, right? The alcoholic has two problems. It is strawberries and mindfuck. Like you need both in order to really be an alcoholic, right? Strawberries is the analogy you're using, right? It's like every time I eat a strawberry, I break out in hives. I leave my wife. I go drunk driving. You know, I have an allergy for strawberries. If all I had was the allergy for strawberries, it would be very simple to know what to do in the face of that, which just don't.
Yeah, that you're right.
Avoid the strawberry patch.
Avoid strawberries. Yeah.
But right. I'm sure you already know where this is going. The other problem we have is mindfuck. Mindfuck is every time you look at a strawberry, all you can remember is the beautiful, delicious flavor of that sweet nectar within that strawberry. You must have another strawberry. You take another bite and the allergy is back. But I don't even know if I believe in that analogy anymore.
Well, you know, it's kind of like it's whatever works in the day. I think I know that it is something, and I'm sure you've heard this as well. There are two things that I hear more bullshit about in my life than ever. One is addiction and addictive people, especially if they're being described by people who have opinions about it but have not experienced it, or people who are in the active throes of it. Man, they really talk a lot.
Right. It's either people who don't know what they're talking about or people who do. Both of them are full of shit.
Full of shit, right. And the other one is aviation. Aviation is something that I was terrified of flying for a long time. And I thought that as people of my strike kind of do, I thought the best way to combat this clearly is to learn how to fly. And I got a pilot's license, and I kind of went through all of that, and I learned so much about it that now when when you read a report about drunk guy on plane forces emergency landing, and you go, it's not an emergency landing. They just landed the plane because there's a drunk guy on it. That's not an emergency. That's just fucking unpleasant. And then, or the is like. Turbulence. The plane dropped 1,000 feet. It didn't. It didn't drop 1,000 feet. And it's weird. It's like a plane traveling at 600 miles an hour going through, rough air moves maybe an inch, a couple of inches, maybe a foot, maybe if you're in real mind-blowing turbulence. But thousands of feet, it's just bullshit. And what I think is interesting is that we now live in a world where there is no, I don't know if I trust any source of information, even the ones that I go to that I supposedly trust. I'm like, sometimes when I hear stuff, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that doesn't sound right to me. I think we've become very suspicious.
I think we should be very suspicious because information has become unbelievably less reliable. And Kash Patel is a part of the issue. But it's true. I've been thinking about this last night because I was working I'm working on a new bit about this very topic, which is that everyone is stupid. I think we all know that. Everyone's stupid except for you and me, right? Craig and Moshe are kind of the only two intelligent people left. But the stupidity has a different harmonic these days. For 200,000 years, stupid people were like, yeah, I'm kind of just like a stupid guy. Like, I'm just a dumb old guy and I go to other people for information. Stupid people now are like, I'm actually the smartest person in the world. Like, I actually know every single thing that there is to know. that is that's the disease of the modern era, is that no one will admit that they don't know anything anymore. And it expresses itself. This is the bit I'm working on is about homeschooling. I'm like, I've never met a person who decided to homeschool their kids. I hope you don't homeschool your kids. I've never met a person that decided who decided to homeschool their kid where I'm like, yes, you are an educator. I have always thought you had it in you. I've never seen it. Never.
That's a fascinating approach, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think, so I have this, it's not an argument, but I have this different point of view with my wife. My wife sees not conspiracy theories, but she always thinks like, you know what these guys in Washington are up to, or you know what these guys are doing. And I'm like, I think her view of the world, like they're up to something, is a rather touching and optimistic view of the world, because I don't think any of these fuckers are smart enough to be up to anything. I think that they're just basically bumping around going, oh, what now? Oh, what now? And I don't think, I have a very hard time in believing in any form of conspiracy theory, because like you, I think most people, except you and me, are pretty stupid.
You know, that's funny. It's like, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
There's a tradition in Judaism. It's called the midrash, right? The midrash are extra canonical anecdotes about biblical figures and the story of the Bible, right? So they're kind of like oral stories that were passed down that are not like fully canon, but are extra canon, right? Like the strange story. Like, I don't know if you ever heard the story of Abraham coming and breaking all of the idols in front of that his father used to worship. I don't know if you've ever heard that story.
I don't know that one. I know the one about I'm going to murder my son. I'm not going to murder my son. That's the only one I know about.
Unfortunately, that one's in the original text. Unfortunately, that made it to the main script. But this is like an extra thing, which is like when God revealed himself to Abraham, Abraham came to his father's, idol worship barn and broke all the idols. And for my whole childhood, I thought that was in the Bible. And then I found out, oh, it's not in the Bible at all. It's just an extra story that people kind of tell. Anyway, what's my point of saying all that? There's all these midrashim, they're called. And there's a great quote about the midrashim, which is, if you believe all of the midrash, you're a fool. If you believe none of them, you're a bigger fool. And that's a religious idea in Judaism. I have always ported that idea over into conspiracy theory. If you believe, but I reverse it, which is, if you believe no conspiracy theory, you're a fool. If you believe all the conspiracy theories, you're a bigger fool.
Yes, I think I can absolutely concur with you on that. But the problem is, of course, is picking the ones to believe and not to believe, and also the agenda, which is interesting. You use Judaism, which of course you would do, but it's because, of course, the Jewish people are always accused. The anti-Semitism is always based on these guys are up to something. Oh, there's an agenda. Like to that protocols of the elders of Zion stuff. I mean,
that's our greatest work. That's our greatest work.
It's so crazy. It's like, I remember hearing a while ago, somebody was banging on about they hated. It was actually, I think it was on Bill Maher's show. Somebody was talking about, I don't suppose they like that on the Hollywood cocktail circuit. And I'm like, Hollywood cocktail circuit? What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, you heard synagogue Hollywood. when you heard Hollywood cocktail circuit, you thought synagogue.
I know. What I thought, how dare you accuse me of that? What I thought was that, do you know anything about Hollywood? The idea that people are hanging around socializing, they're not. They don't do that. It's Hollywood is the most work, LA Hollywood. I'm not talking about Hollywood Boulevard and stuff, but I mean, that's a whole different community. But they do hang out. The idea that people in Hollywood hang out because they like each other in the show business community, I don't see a lot of that. I wasn't aware of it. Maybe they just didn't like me.
Or that we get, you mean that we all get together and kind of like lay out the plan for controlling the culture
For
like,
movies and show business and stuff.
Right. Right. We're gonna be pushing our gender agenda in 2027. That's the plan. Right. Nobody's that sophisticated. And I agree. I get so frustrated. I mean, obviously, bigotry can be frustrating in all of its forms, but it's so frustrating that, if in the computer programming world, in the tech world, there's a lot of Indian programmers, a lot of computer geniuses that are Indian, but nobody's talking about the grand conspiracy for Indians to control the tech universe. But every time the Jews do some stuff, they go, this is a part of a large nebula. No, I mean, would I deny that Jews are overrepresented in Hollywood circles? I would, in the Hollywood cocktail scene, I would not deny this. But it's not like we planned it. It's like, that's an industry. Different industries have different groups that go to them, and that's the way it is.
This is an interesting thing. Have you noticed, we talked about the allergy changing and the alcoholism changing. Have you noticed your approach to Judaism changing as you get older? You become a parent, obviously, as well, and your perspective on these things, has it altered, do you think?
It's altered. I mean, I loathe to even get into this part of the conversation, but it's altered a great deal. And it's altered a great deal because, for the same reason that a lot of things have altered in our society, that Judaism, Jewish identity has been swallowed whole by political agenda. The self-definition of the Jewish culture has become intertwined with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in a way that is so heart-wrenching and exhausting. It's hard for me to say exhausting because I'm not living in the most acute pain of that conflict. But the idea that war and politics and government has been infused into my origin story's spiritual and cultural identity is an endless heartbreak, and one that so I find it harder in some ways to access, and in some other ways maybe easier to access. But as I get older, my relationship with my religion and with my, I guess, ethnic background has become more complicated and more difficult because of forces beyond my control. The same thing, by the way, is true of my relationship with being an American citizen. It's more complicated, more heartbreaking, because of forces that I'm not directly involved in, but I get, I'm sort of endlessly pulled by the external definitions of what it means to be an American, what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be an American Jew. And I hate being, forced into ideological foxholes against my will.
Yeah, I think that is unfortunately a great steaming truck of verisimilitude. I remember when years ago, I was shooting a movie in Moscow, in Russia. And I grew up in the UK in Scotland during the Cold War. And so I was of the belief that the Russians were ready to eat babies and all this stuff you hear about. Whenever you create the other, they're always eating babies and having, human sacrifices and stuff. And I believed that about, I didn't, I mean, you get old enough to think, well, that's probably not entirely true. But then when I went to Russia and interacted with Russians for the first time in Russia, and realizing that a lot of people in Russia were not in any way, shape, or form flag wavers for the Soviet empire. They weren't Stalinists. They were kind of, and I think that it's the creation of the other used to be geographic. Like you could create the other because nobody knew who they were. Now you kind of, I think what is done in our digital cartography is you take the other and you give them a label. And I think the minute you give any group of people a label, then we're getting into trouble. That's when it gets inhuman.
Yeah, so that is step one in empire building and warfare, is to identify the enemy and then make them a non-human entity, right? They are vermin, they are rats, they are terrorists, they are Nazis, they are pedophiles. Well, some of them were Nazis. To be fair, in
some
Germany,
of them were Nazis.
they did have Nazis. Those people were Nazis, but
they were that. Those Nazis, they were Nazis. But I think.
Well,
I think it goes back even further than that, or it begins earlier than that. I think you're right with that, but I think what it does is the first rule of the totalitarian, the aspiring tyrant, I think, is to go after the comedians. Now, I think that what you do is you say which, and both the left and the right in this country are very guilty of this. The jokes that you can't tell and the jokes that you can tell. And that which kind of negates the skill of the teller of the joke, because I am always impressed by a comedian who tells a joke that you can't tell, technically, but actually is so good that this individual, he or she, can tell that joke. And you think there were people like, I love the comedians I admired, like Joan Rivers was a great one for this. She could say a thing that's totally not acceptable, but it was acceptable because the way she put it around. And she's not the only example. Of course, there are many great comedians that do it. But I think when you start saying this area of human life is not subject to humor, that's when totalitarianism begins. Because you can't have an iconoclast if you want to be an icon. You have to go after the iconoclasts. And I feel that
wipe out the iconoclast. That's what it is. That's really interesting. Once you stop having a sense of humor about yourself, that's when you get into the territory of it becomes I am God. You don't make fun of the Lord. That's really interesting. I think like comedy, I always thought in the early days, like when somebody would start telling a joke about certain topics, the Holocaust, slavery, these things, you'd go, okay, I hope this is your best joke, right? And then when you see a person pull it off, you go, wow, impressive. And what has happened, I think, with comedy, and listen, I would not be a shiller of my book without mentioning that we're now touching almost every topic that's in the book. The 6 scenes are AA, Judaism, and comedy. That's 3 out of 6 so far, and we do a history.
Well, I think we should do the whole 6. So we've done AA, we've done Judaism. We're now in comedy. Comedy, yeah. So what do they say about comedy?
Well, what's happened now, what feels very obvious to me is, and it's changing so rapidly, I can't even keep track of it, is that people have fallen under the illusion that, to your point, I think your point is well made. You know, any joke is, any topic is on the table as long as you can pull it off. But now a lot of comedians think the fact that I'm attempting to pull it off is work. It validates the, whatever the topic is. The fact that I was brave enough to tell the Holocaust joke, it doesn't need to be good or funny. It just needs the real revolutionary work is the fact that I'm telling it. So you see these jokes that are offensive without any point. And on the other side, you see the reaction to that is jokes that are progressive and political and lift every voice and raise the glass ceiling. As I say, there are jokes on that side that they punch through the glass ceiling so hard they touch the G spot. Like they're TED Talk. You find these like TED Talk-esque humorless. You find a lack of humor on both sides of the ideological comedy aisle from people that think, well, if I'm on a stage and I'm saying some pro-choice messaging, it doesn't really have to be funny because it's righteous. And on the other hand, well, if I'm on stage and I'm saying something racist, it doesn't really have to be funny because it's really punk rock that I'm being racist in today's society. So both of these things, I say, I can't stand. Both of them need to. You can do anything on stage, I say, right? But it's got to be funny. It's got to be good enough.
I think that's right. I think that's what it is. But I think my feeling is to add to this, and then we'll move from the third part of your book to the last three pieces, because I feel like that's the structure our conversation is taking today, and I like that idea. But I think there are too many comedians.
1,000%.
There's too many, and not all of the. First of all, crowd work is crowd work, and that's fine. But crowd work is not stand-up comedy; it's crowd work. And
Craig, now see, I
know you do it.
I liked when you said you could make a joke about any topic. I liked when you were when you said that Jews control Hollywood. I was willing to accept all these things.
I never said that. How dare you?
You said Hollywood cocktail party. I think we all read between the lines. But if you start impugning crowd work, I was just thinking about this today, Craig. It's like, yes, it's stand-up comedy. It's a different it's a different version of stand-up. It's like saying, I was just thinking about this today. Jazz, that's not music. Beethoven, that's music.
It's not.
Jazz,
but jazz isn't music.
No, I thought you were rejecting the analogy. You were supporting the analogy.
No, jazz is definitely not music.
Like Beethoven writes a symphony, and it's written and it's perfect and it's beautiful, and that's music. Coltrane writes a riff and then goes off on a tangent and creates something in real time that will never be recreated. Yeah. And it's also music. It's just a different kind of music. Anyway, listen, I love crowd work very much, and I understand. I know you do.
That's why I was needling you. Yeah, I did bring it up for a reason, but you're really good at crowd work.
Thank you.
There's a difference. See, I think. Yes, Coltrane, riffs on something and it becomes remarkable. But you don't give a saxophone to someone who's never played one before, and they make 5 different squeaky noises and give it a fucking Netflix special. It's not. It's not right.
And P.S. the way that you start playing the saxophone to get to John Coltrane level is you start in band. And they say, play this song. Oh, when the saints, you're not going off on your weird, Sun Ra-esque, squonking riff on day one. Listen, I agree. But you know what? I always say everybody that says crowd work isn't real comedy hasn't seen a real crowd work master at work. I know that you were just fucking with me. And there's a lot of short shrift given to how many horrifying written jokes there are out there. There's a whole lot of people.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I think though that I guess my objection to the idea, the delusion that, and you brought it up, it's perfect. You don't day one go and do crowd work. Go up and learn how to do the job and then do crowd work, because if not, you're going to do things like, hi, where are you from? Oh, that's stupid. Did you
that's
fart
gay.
there?
That city's gay. I that's how my comedy career started. When I started comedy, I was very loose. And my friend Louis Katz, one of the great joke writers, one of the best dirty joke writers in the business, came up to me. He's a dear friend, and this was on early days. He goes, listen, you haven't, he was maybe a year or two ahead of me. And he goes, you haven't been doing this long enough. He was basically saying you haven't been doing this long enough to be as confident as you are. He's like, you're not actually as good as you are confident, right? It's like, you think you're better than you are because you've got all this confidence. He's like, stop fucking around on stage. Go write jokes for 2 years. And I somehow took him seriously. I really did. I folded that instinct in, and I went and I just started trying to figure out how to write, and then came back, with all of these things that I had written, and then started to unpack the performer that I would become, which is, I always say when I'm at my best, I look at my set list and I go, wow, I didn't do half of these bits I planned on doing because I was so floating in space. But 100%, you have to learn how to, it's just like Picasso. You got to learn the form before you can deconstruct the form. So I've now compared myself to Picasso, to Coltrane, and Coltrane, to Beethoven. You are the Beethoven.
I don't feel like I'm Beethoven in this for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like, take the late night, which is one of the chapters in my 6th chapter book. That late night, I learned how to do late night for this first maybe 18 months of doing it. And then I made a fucking good college try of deconstructing that form for the next 8.5 years. Like throwing everything I could to make it look as fucking absurd as I felt that it was.
But that's what made your
without
show
having
special. I really think that's what made your show special. Was it was like, we've seen this form, and now Craig's doing so many, like, it felt experiential, your show. Like it didn't felt like a mimicry. It felt like a reinterpretation. And I think, to me, that's like, when I'm excited on stage, and when I'm excited to watch a performer, is when I'm like, oh wow, this show is one part his or her act, and one part a gift that he's or she has given to me as in the audience that will only exist in this universe and or on Instagram for the rest of time and get me a Netflix special.
All right. So that's comedy. So we've done alcoholism, Judaism, comedy. What's chapter 4? Novella 4.
Novella 4 is the rave scene. Oh, did you do that? You're a
the
UK
rave
guy.
Scene. You know, I kind of passed me by. I was sober just before ecstasy was invented, so I kind of missed it,
Yeah, it was really, well, here, I did the opposite. I got sober, 15 years old. And, about maybe 9 months into sobriety, I stopped being whipped by this monkey on my back and looked up, my whole illusion, my whole fear, and I'm sure you relate to this. I think every alcoholic relates to this, is like, if I stop drinking and getting high, there'll be nothing to do. I'll have nothing to do. And like, the problem with that kind of thinking is it's a very diseased brain that produces a thought like that, because it stands to reason, if you stop drinking and getting high, you'll have nothing to do. It means, ergo, all you do is drink and get high. So yes, there's perfect logic to that if you're a drug addict and alcoholic. And at about 9 months sober, I looked up and I realized, like, oh my God, I'm 16 years old. I can't go recovery bowling with these Vietnam vets for the rest of my teens and 20s. Like, I got to find something to do. And what the cool part of AA, one of the beautiful parts of my recovery journey was, when I lifted my head up out of the bottle and looked out into the world, I suddenly realized that if I stopped drinking and getting high, what there was to do was everything else. And I decided to spend my life trying to find that everything else. And the first thing I found, was the rave scene in San Francisco. Was I walked by a flyer on a telephone pole, and there, it was a big, massive rave. This is not like the underground parties that got really famous in the UK where you had to call a number. This was like a big commercial rave. And I got $20 from my mom, and I bought a ticket to this rave, and I went by myself. I truly don't know what drew me there. I wasn't a dancer. I was like a gangster. That was my thing. I was like kind of a,
you were
white.
A gangster?
No, I mean, I was, I had an accent.
I know what you mean.
I had an accent, Craig. I had a Southern accent when I was 15. I'm not from the South.
Okay.
Does that kind of paint a picture?
Yeah. I've told myself some stories too.
So I go to this party by myself. I remember I went to an NA meeting the night before, just before. Across the street, there was an NA meeting, and I walked across the street. I told all these black, middle-aged, recovering addicts, the freedom of sobriety is bringing me to that rave across the street. And they were like, we do not know what the fuck you're talking about. And I walked across the street, and I used to use a cologne called Escape by Calvin Klein.
Okay.
It was a terrible scent of the early 90s. And I remember I stuffed this bottle of Escape into a sock as I was waiting in line. And I was like, just in case, I gotta kind of thwap somebody with this sock blackjack that I've built. I mean, that's just this is the brain I'm bringing into this first rave. And I remember I walked into the main room of this party called Cyberfest in 1995, and I I put down the bag containing the potpourri scented blackjack, and I walked into this party, and I just I had as profound a spiritual experience at that first party as I did getting sober. It was a reconstruction. It was a reformation of who I was as a human being. I started pirouetting around the room and dancing, and this gay couple came up to me and they grabbed me on either side and they picked me up in their arms and like, "You're beautiful." And I was like, "What's these motherfuckers, these gay motherfuckers hugging on me?" So I was like, "I know what I got to do." And I grabbed both of their heads, pulled them close to me, kissed them on the cheek and go, "You're beautiful too." I'm telling you, Craig, in one evening, I turned from identity crisis addled wannabe gangsta who thought he was something that he wasn't to soft pirouetting, techno dancing. The next day I dyed my hair blonde and twirled it into little Bjork buns and put barrettes in my hair. I mean, was it absurd? It was absurd, but it was a kind of alchemical shifting of my identity that was as profound as anything I've ever experienced. And I spent all of my 20s throwing raves, DJing at raves, and eventually becoming the world's first clean and sober ecstasy dealer at raves. So it got dark later.
Okay. Yeah, that went to a little bit of a kind of minor note there. It kind of went.
Well, it's like that. It's kind of like that. In fact, a lot of the book is about that. Is you go into this thing. It's like religion. You go into a thing. You have a come to Jesus, baptism moment. It redefines everything about you. And you spend 2 decades in it trying to drink it. Every scene I've ever been in, I've tried to eat it. I want to own it. I want to be the man. And then by that process of trying to eat it, own it, be the man, it starts to curdle the thing a little bit. And then you're 20 years in and you're going, what was it that I found here? Honestly, the book was awesome because I got to remember all the beautiful magic that I found in each of the universes that I occupied.
It's an interesting thing. How did it end then, the rave scene? What was it because of the sober ecstasy, or was it something else?
It was a little bit of that. There's a funny story. So I started DJing. That was that's the alpha. The alpha human in the rave thing is the DJ, and so I wanted to do that. I wanted to do that.
Did you do this? Did you point at people when they were dancing? I feel like that's an essential move.
I would do this, almost like I can't hear, and then I can hear, and then I point. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I started to really become defined by that identity. And about 10 years into the rave scene, through a very complicated series of strange events, I was throwing these bigger and bigger parties, and eventually the person that I was working with kind of was a con man and stole all the money and absconded. And so I was became kind of persona non grata within the promoting rave world that I was in. And as a result of that, all the DJ gigs that I'd been getting started to dry up. And I was also getting older. I was also becoming older. I wasn't 16 anymore.
Yeah.
I was 20.
Arthritis in your pointing finger. That's
right. They're like, "Why are you pointing at the ground?"
and then you really can't hear things either. You're like,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hear things.
When I started going to raves in San Francisco, I was 16 and I was the youngest person there. I was among the youngest. And when I stopped going about 10 years later, it was the median age. And so there was
right.
that. But something very funny happened, which is that I was having this identity crisis and my ego was just being bruised all the time. I wanted people to want me, but nobody wanted me. This is before comedy, so I didn't get the attention that, a comedy will provide you. So I just was my performing life was drying up. Nobody was booking me anymore, but I still had this identity of I am Moshe, DJ Moshe. And, that was my name. And I picked up a flyer to a rave right as I was in the middle of this identity crisis. And there was a DJ on the lineup called DJ E Moshe. E Moshe. I go, E Moshe. That's not, you can't do that. I couldn't I couldn't like become a comedian and call myself Craig Ferguson. I think you would have a bit of an issue with that. So I gathered up all the flyers of all the raves I'd ever been to. I went to this rave and I confronted the guy. I go, "Where's Moshe?" And they're like, "Over there." I go to the guy, I go, "Who are you?" And he's like, I'm me. I go, "Well, I'm Moshe. I'm DJ Moshe. That's me." He goes, "Oh yeah, cool. I've heard of you." I go, "Yeah, you fucking heard of me? You have my name." And I go, "Well, what's the deal? Like, is your name, are you Jewish? Is your name Moshe? And he goes, "No, I just thought it sounded cool." I go, "Yeah, it fucking sounds cool. It's my cool sounding fucking name." And I go, "Look, you gotta drop it. Like, you have to drop the name." And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "No, not no. Yes, you got to drop it. It's my name." And he says, I think I'll keep it." I go, "Okay, look, I'll battle you. Okay. We'll do a DJ battle. You and me."
Oh my God. This is exciting.
Well, it doesn't end as exciting as you want it to. I go, "You and me versus the crowd. The crowd decides whoever wins keeps the name." And he goes,
Right.
I think I'll just keep the name." And I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I could either beat this guy to death or impotently walk away. Guess which option I chose? I impotently walked away.
That's the right choice. The right
I impotently
choice.
walked away. And I'm pretty sure I just gave up on DJing altogether in that moment. And to this day, I'm not convinced. I've never seen Moshe on a flyer since. I'm not convinced Moshe wasn't just a guardian angel that's sent from the heavens to transfer me from one scene to the next.
God works in mysterious ways, His wonders to perform.
Indeed.
So is that when you transition out of DJing, and then the next one's got to be comedy? Then is it comedy the next one?
Well, comedy was in there, but the other world that and I do want to say anecdotally, when I wrote this chapter in the book, I bought myself a DJ controller and I started DJing again 20 years after the fact. If anybody wants to listen to some of my mixes, they're on SoundCloud. But anyway, the next one's Burning Man, and they're very related. They're very related. The rave thing.
Yeah.
This year, I will go, and it will be my 25th time going. I think I've been going for a very long time, and I worked there for a very long time too. So I've seen it go from the thing it was to the thing it is, and I'm watching it become the thing it will be, which is not as exciting as I would hope.
I think it becomes like everything, like punk rock, like Christianity, like anything. It starts off pretty good, and then people get involved, and too many people get involved, it turns into something else. The original idea can get lost in the mix a little bit. I don't know much about Burning Man, other than I know I always envisage Burning Man, and I've never been, but I always imagine it be like 55-year-old men out of shape, walking around wearing shirts and no pants. Shirt caulking, I believe it's called.
You nailed it. And that's what keeps me coming back 25 years later.
So Burning Man, and then what? I'm waiting for it to be you became a parent, and that's what the world. Is that what happens?
I would say that's the true framing device of the whole thing. Is that really, I didn't even realize it till I was done with the book. Is that really the book is and it kind of connects back to what we were talking about earlier. That the book is really an archaeological artifact that I'm leaving to my daughter so that she can know the things that life threw at me. Because, and this is sort of what I talk about this at the end of the book, because when we were growing up, Craig, this is true for you, it's true for me, your life felt very accidental. Your life felt very like, if I go to this bar with this guy and I try cocaine, then I become a cocaine guy and a drinker, and then I end up in AA, and then I meet my wife. And then if I go with this other guy and I smoke pot in the forest with that guy, then I become a hippie, and then I become a bassist in this hippie band, and then I become Fish. And it was all this very like accidental stumbling from scene to scene. And the internet and social media has made not that process impossible, but that process much more difficult, because culture has become sort of the aperture has shrunk into really one thing. There's this like monoculture that, you pick up your phone and your algorithm tells you what's cool, what's culture, what you should think, what you should believe, how you should dance, all of these things. And so in a way, I didn't do a section on parenting, but in a way, the whole thing is for my daughter to like go, here are all the things that made me me. And I really hope that you find things that are uniquely you and find a path that, is uniquely yours, that doesn't get handed to you, but that you stumble into.
Do you have a strategy for that for your daughter? Do you, I mean, I'm a real hard ass about my kids and social media. I mean, they're on select sites, but I'm not cool with it.
Do I have a strategy for avoiding social media?
Or for her? I mean, like a parenting strategy. Yeah.
Well, you start to realize, I'm sure you realize this too, like a lot of it is about exposing them to things you like and then seeing if they like them too. And then you start going, after about 10 activities, they're all of a sudden 7. And you're like, oh my God, I'm like running out of time here to like, I can't do judo and surfing and camping and circus. Eventually they're going to run out of options and I keep waiting for the thing where my daughter looks at me and goes, this is me, and I haven't, she's 7, she's young, but I'm just curious of that moment because it didn't happen for me until I was much older. That moment where you click into your kind of like your destiny, like, was that you? Was that comedy for you? Was that the only time that you felt that?
Not at all. I still don't. I'm not entirely convinced it's something I want to get involved in. My oldest kid, my son, when he was about like very young, like a toddler, he became fascinated with early Disney. The real old kind of, the black and white kind of early Disney stuff. And he would watch it over and over and over again. And he was always fascinated with anime. He loved cartoons. All kids love cartoons, of course, but he loved them in a way I had never seen them love it. He graduated from the School of Visual Arts, New York, and he runs an independent animation studio with his friends. And
that's the dream.
It's like,
Craig, that's the dream. That is the dream, that your child goes, here's who I am. And not only do I love it, I'm going to be great at it. I will be great at it. That to me, I'm jealous of that. I mean, listen, I'm so excited to see what the world brings to my daughter's consciousness and life. I don't put any pressure on her like that. It's all internal, me looking at her.
I didn't either, right?
Half of my experience of her is looking at things she does and going, uh-oh, is this like me? Uh-oh, is she going to turn out like me? Uh-oh, like she's got a lot of me in her. But I think that's so awesome that your son, like early on, found that like little tickle that became his life. And I think about that, by the way, with comedy, like I can't leave. This is what's different about this scene versus the other ones, is that I'm 22 years into comedy. I pay all of my bills with it. This is permanent. So I had better find a way. I'm not going back to grad school. It's too late. So I had better find a way to make it feel refreshing, make it feel useful and meaningful and not that's a challenge for me. I don't know about you. So that I can keep the dream.
I have a perfect solution for you.
Yeah.
Stop using the word comedy.
What do you use?
Because, well, I do comedy, but I think that what you are, and this is one of the reasons why I hate to say this because it sounds so part of the Hollywood cocktail circuit, but I am a fan of you. But I am a fan of you. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today. You are an interesting person. You're erudite and thoughtful, and you have a brain which causes you difficulty, and you use everything in your power to navigate through the universe. And comedy is a very useful tool for that. But why limit yourself? And I think the good comedians to me, no, I'm not talking about, the ones that we don't need to talk about, but But good comedians to me are just Socratic philosophers. That's all they are. The history goes all the way back to Epictetus and before. And what it is you say how you perceive the world and you present it in such a way that other people are stimulated by it. But comedy doesn't have to be the only way to do it. It's just, it's a convenient platform for a philosopher, which is what I believe you are. And it's what I aspire to be. You're a philosopher who struggles in the world, and your perception, the absurdities of it, provide you with comedy. But there are particularly, and I noticed this after I became a parent as well, there is an incandescent level of beauty that I never loved anyone until my first kid was born. I thought I did, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like, it was just, it was like, oh, you're nice. But when my first son was born, maybe not even when he was born, like about 6 months in, because when they're little babies, like, but when they start, being human, there's a whole different perspective. And I have a tattoo here. I have a lot of tattoos, but this little tattoo here is where I wear my watch. And when I forget to wear my watch, that's still there. What it is the planet Saturn. And the planet Saturn is the bringer of old age. So even though if I'm not wearing my watch, I can look at it and go, Saturn, of course, was the god. Yeah. And right. But in the Planet Suite, we were talking about music. In the Planet Suite by Holst, that's got like down, for Mars, the god of war, and all that. And there is a piece of music called Saturn, because he does all of it. Like you wrote your book about all these things. He wrote his suite of music about all the different planets. And in the piece of music, Saturn, the bringing of old age, it's a very odd, weird piece of music. It's almost like a ambient Brian Eno type piece of music. It's a very strange piece of music. And the aging process, I think, is that. It's fucking weird. And I think that the way I stay enthusiastic about things is the fact that it's just getting stranger. I now have friends, contemporaries. I'm 60. I'm going to be 63 years old in about a month. I have friends who just like fucking die, just like fall over and die. I'm not talking about drug overdoses and stuff. I'm just like,
life
die.
overdoses.
Or they just run out of fucking,
Yeah.
And it's
right.
And I think that if I have any delight in making and having a little bit of the successes that allows you to do the thing that you do, but also do other things too. I think you've been doing that since you were 16. I think that's entirely, like I will be a DJ Moshe. Although, and I have to say, and I was going to say this when you brought it up, I never heard of DJ Moshe. Where the fuck is DJ Moshe now? So, a lot of good it did him.
Well, he's probably doing comedy now. Probably.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, Craig, what you said is beautiful. It's like it's one of the things, and I do need to say, Hollywood Cocktail Party, that I'm a fan of yours as well, and have been for a long time. But what you're saying is so true. Like I've been thinking about aging lately myself, because like I'm at the age where the youth is it's starting to not be applicable to me. And I want to fight that. I'm still in the fight it phase, like cling. And one of the things and I feel this way with my career, and I feel this way with my life path. I feel this way with the raising of my daughter, is like, there is no way out but through. I can fight aging, but I cannot stop it. There isn't a way out but death. And so a thing that I am unable to affect any meaningful leverage upon, I may as well embrace. I'm still, by the way, figuring out how to embrace it. I'm not going to claim that I am, but I'm starting to process that idea. Like life goes in one direction. Time, I don't fully understand time and space, but it seems to me that time is linear, and you must only continue to walk, because the other option is to fall off the edge.
I think so. I think though time is linear physically. I think that's correct, but I think physicality is not all there is. I'm not talking about life after death or anything like that. I mean, I don't know anything about that, just like no one else doesn't. But I do kind of, I am interested in the notion of, I don't know if you ever, you familiar with Brian Cox, Dr. Brian Cox,
Sure. Yeah.
the,
The handsome scientist.
The handsome scientist, very handsome, very cool, very clever. I think he's an astrophysicist, but I'm not sure. I mean, he's some kind of expert on all things time. And he did a beautiful show for the BBC about time. Somewhere in Space Time, it's called. If you get a chance to find it, you should watch it.
That.
It's beautiful because it is absolutely poetic. And he talks about time. And he does a very interesting thing because I suppose it's wrapped up with Einstein, but he gets into a supersonic jet and flies west into the sunset. And of course, he's flying west into the sunset faster than the speed of sound. And as he flies into the sunset, the sun starts to rise because he's traveling fast in a direction where so it's really about where you are in the universe affects what time is. In fact, I think it's called the theory of relativity.
I understand that theory completely. That's the 6th section of my book is about the theory of relativity and my work on it. Do you know this? This blew my mind, and I don't understand it, so don't ask me to explain it. But I'm sure Brian Cox talks about it in this special, which is that time, the linear thing that we are describing, the thing that makes us older and the thing that, makes the sun go up and down, and space in like the thing that you look up and it's up there, but it's also over there and down, is the same thing. The thing that makes your grandma old and die is the thing that contains Saturn. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? But according to these theoretical physicists, that is true.
Well, I think if you're wrestling with those questions, then by all means do crowd work, but don't just do crowd.
Amen. Amen.
Amen is a good word to end with. It's great talking to you and catching up with you again. I love talking to you, and I do remain a big fan. You are the only crowd work guy that I can watch and go, all right, I suppose that's
nice. But there are some other masters out there. Listen, I'm going to leave you. I've loved talking to you. I always do. And I'll leave you with, we never discussed the 6th scene. So I'll leave it with you so that you can ask me back someday. We can talk about it for an hour, but it's
we'll start with the 6th episode.
That's right.
Maybe you can write another book
about space-time,
right?
About the 6th episode.
No, write another book with 6 other things.
That's interesting. I'd have to get a lot of living done. Anyway, it's the world of the deaf and American Sign Language. My mother and father and all my siblings.
Right. Of course, your parents were deaf.
Yeah, and I spent a long time as a sign language interpreter. So it goes through the whole history of sign language and American Sign Language and the education of the deaf. And anyway, the book's called Subculture Vulture, and I'm very proud of it. And that's all I have to say. It sounds really good.
I can't speak sign language, but or can't sign language, but I used to be a bit better at it because I was helping a guy get sober who was deaf.
Oh wow!
And so the only thing we could do was, he could lip read a bit, but he was taught. He was profoundly deaf. So he could do that, and he taught me some sign language. I've forgotten most of it. The only thing I remember is British Sign Language is a different language to American Sign Language, which I thought was fascinating. I thought it was weird, and then when I heard that this was weird. And that's weird. That, which I think is very witty, and that's odd. That's weird and odd, and and well, I think that it's a very funny thing, sign language. It makes me laugh. It's clever and witty.
And it is very witty. It is very funny. And it used to be much more in your face. I won't do it, but I want you to guess what the sign for Asian and Chinese was when I was a kid. Thankfully,
that's probably not good.
Thankfully, deaf Chinese immigrants moved to America and were like, what the fuck is the sign for Chinese? No, we've got our own sign, okay? And they've updated the language. But all that and more.
I think that's probably good. All right, get out of here. It's great to see you.
You're the best. Yeah, great seeing you too. I hope I see you again somewhere along the space-time continuum.
Somewhere in space-time.